I can say, indeed, there are a good number of high-security underground facilities, bases, and installations run by the Federal Alphabet Soup. And so I left it at that. And now I know so much more than I do then, but although that wasn't a bad first cut at it. The article was pretty well received, and that's, like almost 15 years ago now, 14 and a half years ago. Well, the article appeared in early November, and at that point I felt like, well, I've been there and I've done that. Case closed, slam, dunk.
Right.
And meanwhile...
Famous last words.
Pardon me?
Famous last words.
Exactly. So I was, snug abed the last week of December. And if you've ever been at the university, any large university in America, the last week of December is the deadest month out of the year. Everything shuts down, even the libraries.
Right.
So even those who are the kind you have to pry out of the library at 1 o'clock in the morning, as I was, have to go home and rest.
Mm-hmm.
So there I was, fast asleep in the wee hours of the morning. It was, I don't remember the precise day, but it was the week between Christmas and New Year's in 1992. And all of a sudden, I was wakened out of a deep sleep, and I didn't know why. Suddenly, I was laying flat on my back in the dark, mentally alert, but still very physically relaxed. It happened just within 2 or 3 seconds. Bang, I was awake. So I was laying there thinking, well, isn't this puzzling? What's going on? And I didn't have to wonder long, because right out of thin air, I heard a voice speaking in my ear. And it was a man's voice. This was a disembodied voice. I didn't see anyone. Indeed, I didn't have the sense that anyone was physically present in the room. I didn't feel alarmed. I didn't feel scared. I've had I would say, a large number of anomalous and paranormal experiences over the years, ever since very early childhood, continuing right down to the present day. And so for me to have an anomalous, paranormal type experience didn't frighten me. It's happened so often that for me it wasn't that unusual. But what he said was, I heard the voice of a male, an adult male speaking normally accented late 20th century North American English. In other words, it could have been the voice of any one of many millions of men. It sounded to me as if he were a literate person who had had a university education. But again, right there you're talking about tens of millions of people. And but what he said was most interesting. He started out like this, in a very matter-of-fact, calm way. He said, the underground bases are real. And then he paused a half a second for a little bit of dramatic effect. And then he went on to tell me for 2 or 3 minutes in broad terms that indeed there are a lot of underground facilities and bases, and that there are secret projects and programs being carried out down there, that the scope of all of this is very large, that a lot of money and technology and people are involved, and that as he spoke, I got the very real impression of government agencies involved, companies and corporations, and of great stealth and secrecy and high tech and much ado about a great deal, as a matter of fact. And it also impressed upon me that this was something that, in general, people didn't know about it. Most people are just oblivious to it. And in fact, until that year, I had been. And so he went on that way in a fairly general way, but as he spoke, I got the idea, and I was thinking, man, this is big. There's really a lot involved in this. Money, technology, people, secrecy. There's a lot going on down there, and it's really, the scope of this is grand.
Let me ask you, did you get the impression that this was truly a paranormal...
No, I felt that it was electronic telepathy.
Okay, so you think that it was like being beamed?
As he was speaking, that's what I felt, and I still do. In fact, and I explore this a little bit in Kundalini Tales, and I discussed this episode a little bit at the beginning of underwater and underground bases. And what I felt was that it was not a, if you want to call it naturally telepathic communication as you might receive from a yogi or from a natural-born telepath or something like that. I felt that it was electronic or technologically enhanced, if you will. And so my feeling is, and I went out and did a patent search, as a matter of fact, or actually I was alerted to this by a Austrian researcher, Lammers, Helmut and Marion Lammer, the very good Austrian researchers who no longer do this type of research that was gotten out of it. But Helmut had run across this patent in some of his research, and then I subsequently did more searching and found a whole slew, and there are even more now, of patents pertaining to the electronic control of the human mind and human awareness and consciousness. And so this is really old technology.
Right.
This is mid-20th century technology.
Oh, yeah.
Even before.
Yeah, Richard Dolan writes about it in his UFOs in the National Security State also. Yeah, well,
I don't know where Richard heard about this, but Richard and I have certainly talked many times in recent years, in person, also on the phone, and exchanged many emails. Richard and I have talked about all kinds of topics, including these sorts of topics. And I mean, so it's not only the Lammers and Richard Dolan and me. A lot of people now are aware of this. I'm glad that this body of knowledge is slowly gaining traction and currency, but it's reality. The technology for the electronic manipulation of human consciousness and the human mind is well advanced and is insidious.
Exactly.
But anyway, no, from the very beginning, even as this guy was talking, I was thinking, bingo, I mean within the first 2 or 3 seconds that was the case. And I also had the very real impression that I wasn't hearing from a demon or an angel,
right,
or from an extraterrestrial or from God or you follow me, or that I was mad or losing my mind and
right,
deranged.
You knew what you were dealing with.
I felt then, and I still do, that I was hearing from the proverbial insider. It was a leak, an inside leak using some inside technology, and this man, for whatever reason, probably had read the article that had come out just several weeks before in UFO magazine, and had decided to give a data dump, if you will, to Richard Sauder in the wee hours of the morning. Now, very interesting. Now, of course, you know, anyone with access to modern database technology, unless you're an absolute hermit in the middle of the wilds, can find you. If you pay a water bill or a phone bill or an electric bill, or if you get financial aid from a federal agency or whatever, they'll know your phone number and your physical address, and it can be found in 30 seconds. So once they know where you live, it'd be a pretty fair assumption that you'll be sleeping there. And right, so I think it'd be a child's play for someone with access to target your house with a transmitter from an orbiting satellite, for example, in the middle of the night, and say, if you had clout and you were high enough in the military-industrial complex, you could probably get a couple of minutes of satellite time. Yeah, no doubt. If you were in the NSA or the NRO or, you know, the DIA or Army Intelligence or Naval, you know, ONI or something like that, I think you could get it for a couple of minutes, and I think that's what happened. That sounds like a very reasonable explanation for it. Now, the question is why, and I think presumably the intent was on the part of this person, who probably is not alone, to further spark my interest as a manner and ratify what I had started to do, and say, and by the way, Richard, my name was never mentioned, but it didn't need to be. In a manner of speaking, to say, by the way, Richard, you're onto something, and listen here, there's a great deal more down that direction that you start to head. So why don't you dig a little deeper and see what else you can find? And I think that was a plain implication of it, and it And it implies that there are people, so-called insiders,